සියලුම SLT මොබිටෙල් සේවාවන් MySLT ඇප් එක හරහා කරගන්න. සියලුම SLT මොබිටෙල් සේවාවන් MySLT ඇප් එක හරහා කරගන්න.
දසනකාන්ති චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe begins official visit in Japan, where key bilateral discussions will take place, with debt restructuring expected to be at the center of talks. No military influence. President Wickremesinghe clarifies that China's Belt and Road Initiative is purely commercial and that Sri Lanka will not have agreed if it had any military influence.
We are just starting the talks with China. We'll have to go to a high level.
Legal response. Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to legally respond to accusations levelled by PUCSL chairman over quality of imported crude oil consignment, says Subject Minister Kanchana Wijesekara. Law and order. Acting Defence Minister says government will react in accordance with the law to activities that affect the daily lives of the general public. All this and much more coming up tonight, this Monday, the 26th of September 2022.
Vimdiara milliliter CA Smart Pack එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome joining you tonight on First at 9. I'm Indivari Amuatta. President Ranil Wickremesinghe clarifies that Sri Lanka considers China's Belt and Road Initiative as purely commercial and that Sri Lanka would not have agreed to it if it had any military influences. In an exclusive interview with Nitin Gokhale of Indian-based Straight News Global, President Wickremesinghe said the Sri Lankan government looks to work out enhanced relationships with all countries to seek support amidst the crisis. The President added that talks on restructuring bilateral debt have resumed with both India and China, while also implementing some of the prior actions required as per the recently inked staff-level agreement with Washington-based International Monetary Fund.
What is Sri Lanka looking at as far as the solutions to the problems are concerned?
We have discussions with the IMF. We have come to a staff-level agreement, but now we have to deal with our creditors. Once we have a final come to a conclusion with the creditors, then we will go back to the IMF board. So if you are looking at what is the phase we are in, okay, we are implementing some of the prior actions that are required under the staff level agreement, and we've started the discussions with the bilateral creditors. Once that's over, I think we have to do with the private creditors. Already we started the talks with India, but at a lower level. We are just starting the talks with China. We'll have to go to a high level, but we have to now see whether we are doing it before the party conference or after. Since we are just starting the talks, it may have to be just after
with China.
With China, it may have to be after the
party congress.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka being at a very strategic location geographically, how do you see yourself in the coming years in terms of connectivity, trade, going forward? What is going to be Sri Lanka's role in your view?
So Sri Lanka has a big role to play in connectivity and economic base. Also, if you look at it strategically, the two channels 8 and 9 are important for us as much as it's important for India, because all the shipping must go through that.
Right.
But we also have separate access through Trincomalee into the Bay of Bengal. No, but we can be a sort of a logistic point. There's no logistic center in the Indian Ocean. Between Dubai and Singapore, there's a vacuum, and that itself is useful. It can service part of the Bay of Bengal and also India. So that's where we feel logistics will be a main one, and we develop from there.
You've also spoken about upgrading the existing FTA or updating it or making it a comprehensive comprehensive economic partnership
That's
with
right.
India. In that respect, where are you now?
We've restarted it. We're looking at the domestic end here. We finalize it and then we'll talk to India.
Also, renewable energy and connectivity with India
Yes,
is one of your focus areas. How is that working in the north
Well,
of
we've
the country?
started now. I think with Adani there's been one agreement. There's another agreement on renewable energy with an Australian company. We are going ahead. It's not merely renewable energy, but I think it's also the question of green hydrogen. We have the potential. On both sides of the Park Strait, there's a big potential for wind energy also.
And one of the proposals I again heard you, or maybe I read it somewhere, that you've said that Indian currency will be made acceptable.
Yes, we are doing that.
Will that help
That will
boosting
also help.
taking India-Sri Lanka partnership to the next level? What would you propose to do it? I mean, there was very close bonding in the past 7-8 months, the help India gave, hopefully without strings. So how are you going to assure India that you will continue to sort of be with India and look at your own interests as well as India's interest? What are you
No,
proposing?
we've been working and we have to discuss some of the issues because sometimes India will work within the Quad. We work outside the Quad. And I mean, it has to be at different levels now, facets from what I can see. Indian Ocean is developing separately and how we interact with each other, not only with India. Secondly is China and the presence of China and the Belt and the Road Initiative. We consider the Belt and the Road Initiative as a commercial. If it has any defense implications or military implications, we won't be there. Of course, with that, China is expanding its presence in the Indian Ocean.
Yes.
Then India is already there. Now I think for India it's a question of how fast are you growing. That's the internal issue. Our interest has been in commercial and economic.
With China?
With China. We can't go to war with anyone. We want freedom of navigation here. That's where we are. We've got to work the relationship out just as much as India is working its relationship out with US while having relations with Russia. So all of us have the same problem.
Of course. You also acted very tough on the protesters after they sort of subsided a little bit, and you said action must be taken on those who have taken law in their hands. Has that been a bit of a concern for civil society here, or have they accepted it?
For the country, they have accepted it. I came in because a large number of people wanted law and order maintained, especially when you try to take over parliament. What are you going to do? Are you going to wait if they try to take over the Lok Sabha?
No, obviously nobody wants
So we also wouldn't wait.
Right.
I was asked to send my letter of resignation and otherwise they burn down the house.
That was a big loss, I think. It was.
Yeah, but if they burn down my house, then there's no reason to send a letter of resignation.
I think that worked in your favor.
They should have said.
They should have blackmailed you there, perhaps.
They should have first tell the into which they burned down the house and then tell me to.
Then you became more adamant, I suppose.
And no, then they want to take over parliament.
Right.
And fortunately, the army acted at that stage. I told the army to preserve parliament. There's no other way.
Any message to India or the Indian people who are looking at Sri Lanka with a lot of concern?
2 words. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe arrived in Tokyo a short while ago, beginning his 2-day official visit in Japan, where he will hold key bilateral talks with the Japanese Premier Fumio Kishida. The talks come at a time when Japan assured to back Sri Lanka in efforts to restructure about $30 billion in debt. President Wickremesinghe will also travel to the Philippines, where he is scheduled to participate in a series of high-level meetings there.
During the early hours today, President Ranil Wickremesinghe left Sri Lanka to embark on official visits to Japan and the Philippines. During his 2-day official visit in Japan, President Wickremesinghe will attend the state funeral ceremony of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, together with other heads of state, diplomats and high-ranking officials. The Sri Lankan head of state is also scheduled to hold bilateral discussions with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, with debt restructuring support expected to be at the center of talks. President Wickremesinghe will also meet Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi and Japanese Finance Minister Sunichi Suzuki. Thereafter, the president is scheduled to leave for the Philippines to preside over the governors' meeting of the Asian Development Bank. During his visit to the Philippines, President Wickremesinghe will hold discussions with the President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos, and the President of the Asian Development Bank, Masatsugu Asakawa, before returning to Sri Lanka on the 30th of September. Meanwhile, in his absence, acting ministers have been appointed to oversee subject ministries under the president's purview. Accordingly, State Minister Pramitha Bandara is appointed as the acting Defence Minister, State Minister Shehan Semasinghe as the acting Minister of Finance, Economic Stabilisation and National Policies, State Minister Dilum Amunugama as acting Minister of Investment Promotion, State Minister Kanaka Herath as the acting Minister of Technology, and State Minister Anupa Pascual as the acting Minister of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment.
And the United States Permanent Representative to the UN Food and Agriculture Agencies in Rome, Ambassador Cindy McCain, called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe last evening for a wide-ranging discussion prior to his departure from Sri Lanka. Taking to Twitter, the US Ambassador in Colombo, Julie Chung, said the meeting between President Wickremesinghe and Ambassador McCain focused on the impact of the crisis on Sri Lanka and the many ways through which the United States and Sri Lanka are working together to meet urgent humanitarian needs in the island. The US Embassy in Colombo earlier said in a statement that Ambassador Cindy McCain is visiting Sri Lanka to highlight the US food assistance programs in Sri Lanka and to reinforce the US commitment and lasting partnerships with the island. Ambassador McCain is expected to join US Ambassador in Colombo to travel to the central province in order to visit schools, agricultural research facilities, community organizations and meet with recipients and implementers of relief provided through US humanitarian assistance programs. Ambassador McCain will remain in Sri Lanka until Wednesday. In other local stories, Acting Defence Minister Pramitha Bandara Tennakoon says government will react in accordance with the law in response to activities that affect the daily lives of the general public. He made these comments while addressing a media briefing organised by the Department of Government Information today. Addressing the same media briefing, Defence Secretary General Kamal Gunaratne said the decision whether the protest site at the Golface Green should continue will be made at the National Security Council in future.
අගතගාමී වෘත්තීය සමිති වලත් ඇතැම් දේශපාලන කණ්ඩායම් වලට සම්බන්ධ සීමිත පිරිසක් තම ඉලක්ක සපුරා ගැනීම සඳහා නැවත රට අරාජක කිරීමේ උත්සාහයක නිරත වෙනවා. දේශපාලන න්‍යාය පත්‍ර අනුව හැසිරෙන ඇතම් විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ශිෂ්‍ය සංගම් අන්තගාමී වෘත්තීය සමිතිවල පිරිස් මෙහි මුල් තැනගෙන තිබෙනවා. කිසිදු උද්ඝෝෂණයක්, පෙළපාලියක් හෝ විරෝධතාවක් නිසා සාමාන්‍ය ජන ජීවිතයට බාධාවක් සිදු නොවිය යුතුයි. ඒ නිසා පෙරකී කණ්ඩායම් සිය අරමුණු ඉටු කර ගැනීමට අනීතිකව ගන්නා සෑම උත්සාහයක්ම නීතියට අනුව රජය විසින් මැඩ පවත්වන බව ආරක්ෂක රාජ්‍ය අමාත්‍යවරයා ලෙස මම නැවත අවධාරණය කර සිටිනවා. පැය 6කට කලින් ඕනෑම විරෝධතාවයක් පිළිබඳව පොලිසියට දැනුම් දීමක් කරලා අවසරයක් ලබා ගත්තොත් කිසිම ගැටලුවක් ප්‍රශ්නයක් නොවන බව අපි වගකීමෙන් මේ වෙලාවේ මතක් කරනවා.
කලින් ඇතිවෙච්ච තත්ත්වය නැවතත් ඇති නොවිය යුතුයි. මහා විශාල කොළඹ නගරය තුළ ඉතාමත්ම සුළු ස්ථාන කිහිපයක් පමණයි අපි අධි ආරක්ෂිත කලාප විදියට නම් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. උද්ඝෝෂණ ස්ථානය අපි ඇති කරලා දීලා තියෙන්නේ. වැරදි ස්ථානයක කියන එක අපි හැමෝටම තේරුම් ගිහිලා තියෙනවා. මෙතනදී පළමුවෙන්ම ජනාධිපති කාර්යාලයේ රාජකාරී ඉෂ්ට කරන්න, ලේකම් කාර්යාලයේ රාජකාරී ඉෂ්ට කරන්න පුළුවන් කමක් තියෙන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද උද්ඝෝෂණ වලට එන අය උද්ඝෝෂණ ස්ථානයේ නවතින්නේ නැහැ. කෙලින්ම එන්නේ ජනාධිපති කාර්යාලයේ දොරටුව ළඟට. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා ඒ ස්ථානයත් අයිති වෙනවා මේ අධ්‍යාරක්ෂක කලාපයට ඒ ස්ථානයත් අයිති වෙයි. නමුත් මහජනතාවට උද්‍යානයක් නිසා ගෝල්ෆේස් උද්‍යානය එතන විවේකීව ගත කිරීමේ කිසිම බාධාවක් ඇති වෙන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් තවදුරටත් මෙතන උද්ඝෝෂණ ස්ථානයේ විදියට පවත්වාගෙන යනවද කියන එක ආරක්ෂක මණ්ඩලයේදී සාකච්ඡා කළා. ඒ ගැන ඉදිරියේදී තීරණයක් ගනී. නමුත් මගේ පුද්ගලික මතය නම් උද්ඝෝෂණ ස්ථානයට එතන සුදුසු ස්ථානයක් නෙවෙයි.
A fundamental rights petition was filed before the Supreme Court challenging the Gazette notification issued by the President declaring high security zones within Colombo district. On Friday, President Ranil Wickremesinghe issued a Gazette extraordinary declaring several areas as high security zones in the Colombo district. The Gazette states that no person will be allowed to conduct or hold a public gathering or procession on a road, ground, shore or other open areas located within the high security zones without the prior permission of the Inspector General of Police or the senior DIG in charge of Western Province. Several opposition politicians, trade union leaders and other organizations criticized the move, accusing the government of attempting to suppress protest movements and protesters. The Parliament Complex, Supreme Court Complex, High Court Complex in Colombo, Magistrates Court Complex in Colombo and Attorney General's Department, the Presidential Secretariat, President's House, Sri Lanka Army Headquarters and Police Headquarters, Defence Ministry and Sri Lanka Army Headquarters in Akuregoda, Sri Lanka Air Force Headquarters in Slave Island and the Prime Minister's office at Flower Road were declared at high security zones within the Colombo district through the President's Gazette. CPC to legally respond to PUCSL chairman's claims. Details after this break.
අයිනෝ පුතා හැබැයි යා ගෙදර නිදියන්නෙම අමුතු තැනක.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වහලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. Then you know Rhino. I know.
Big 3.
Uber Eats මගින් ඉදිරිපත් කරන ආදරයෙන් අවශ්‍යතා ඇති අයට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩ පරිත්‍යාග කිරීමට වේදිකාවක්.
Welcome back to the news. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara said that the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation will legally respond to accusations levelled by the PUCSL chairman Janaka Ratnayaka regarding the quality of imported crude oil consignment. The minister added that extended power cuts were requested by the Ceylon Electricity Board due to the breakdown at Laksapana hydropower plant, insufficient funds at the CEB for diesel and hydro management.
Speaking at a media briefing on Thursday, Chairman of the Public Utilities Commission, Janaka Ratnayaka, said the Ceylon Electricity Board has requested to increase the power cuts to 2.5 hours due to the inappropriate quality of the crude oil imported to the country.
දැන් මේ තෙල් පිරිපහදුවෙන් එන ෆර්නස් ඔයිල් එක මේ වෙස්ට් කෝස්ට් කියන බලාගාරයට පාවිච්චි කළ නොහැකි තත්ත්වයක් ඇති. මොකද ඒකේ තියෙන සල්ෆර් කොන්ටෙන්ට් එක වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා. අපි හිතනවා මේ ගෙනලා තියෙන බොර තෙල් හරි ප්‍රමිතියෙන් යුතු නැති නිසා ඒන් ලැබෙන මේ ෆර්නස් ඔයිල් එක අපිට විදුලිය ජනනය කිරීම සඳහා පාවිච්චි කළ නොහැකි බවක්. සල්ෆර් කොන්ටෙන්ට් එක තියෙන ඕන සාමාන්‍යයෙන් 2% පමණ ක්‍රූඩ් ඔයිල් රිෆයින් කරලා එන ෆර්නස් ඔයිල් එකේ සල්ෆර් කොන්ටෙන්ට් එක සාමාන්‍ය 3% ප්‍රමාණය තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා මේ පාවිච්චි කිරීමට නොහැකි වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා තමයි හිතන්නේ මේ තියෙන තෙල් ප්‍රමාණය පරිස්සමෙන් පාවිච්චි කිරීම සඳහා විදුලි මණ්ඩලයේ ඉල්ලුවේ වැඩි කාලයක් විදුලිය කපන්න ඕන කියලා පැය 2යි විනාඩි 20ක් අපි ඒකට සාධාරණ හේතු.
However, Subject Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said today that the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation will legally respond to the accusations levelled by the PUCSL chairman regarding the quality of the imported crude oil consignment. Minister Wijesekara also noted that the CPC is in possession of adequate stocks of diesel and fuel at the moment. He added that the extended power cuts were requested by the Ceylon Electricity Board due to the breakdown at the Lakshapana hydropower plant, insufficient funds at the CEB for diesel and hydro management.
The Department of Meteorology, meanwhile, has issued an advisory for severe lightning in several provinces and districts of the country. According to the department, the thunder showers accompanied by severe lightning are likely to occur at several places in the northern and north-central provinces and in Trincomalee, Matale, Putlam, Monaragala and Batiklo districts. Fairly heavy showers and above 75 millimetres may occur at some places in the areas. Temporarily localized strong winds are also expected during thunder showers, and general public is requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by lightning activity. Taking you to markets, Colombo stocks commenced the week on a negative note, with profit-taking visible on selected stocks as investors cut their margin positions ahead of the month end. Meanwhile, retail, capital goods and materials sector majorly pulled down the index, whereas plantation and hotel sector counters witnessed an upsurge during the session. As a result, the index witnessed a steep fall during the beginning of the session and continued to descend and closed the day at 9,844, losing 121 points. Turnover improved to 4.6 billion rupees, largely led by transportation sector, accounting for a contribution of 45%. Meanwhile, net foreign buying of 1.8 billion rupees was witnessed during the day, supported by the off-board transaction of Expo, amounting to 1.7 billion rupees, as the parent company SG Holdings continued to buy back a sizable quantity of the shares. Now, global markets continued their losing streak, with Asian markets tumbling to a two-year low and European markets trading in the red. Traders will keep an eye on a number of economic reports this week, including US initial jobless claims and GDP data, along with the PMI figures from China.
Most Asian indices closed in the red today as traders witnessed the collapse of the British pound and heightened recession fears. The Nikkei 225 in Japan dropped 2.66% and the Topix also slipped 2.71%. South Korea's Kospi tumbled 3.02% and the Kosdaq plunged 5.07%. In Australia, the S&P ASX 200 declined 1.6%. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside of Japan was 1.34% lower. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index fell 0.2%, with the Hang Seng Tech Index rising 1.61%. In mainland China, the Shanghai Composite fell 1.2% and the Shenzhen Component was down 0.39%. Meanwhile, the European markets except for Italy were also trading lower, with the continent-wide Stock 600 index closing lower. Italian shares jumped 1% after right-wing coalition led by Giorgia Meloni looked set to win the country's general election. The UK's FTSE 100 dropped 0.6%, while Germany's DAX 30 was steady. In the futures markets, contracts tracking Wall Street's S&P 500 slipped 0.7%. Those moves came after global equities closed out a second straight week of declines on Friday, knocked lower by concerns over monetary policy tightening and a glooming economic outlook.
Oil prices fell for a second day today on fears of lower fuel demand from an expected global recession sparked by rising worldwide interest rates and as surging US dollar limits the ability of non-dollar consumers to purchase crude. The dollar index, meanwhile, that measures the greenback against a basket of major currencies, climbed to a 20-year high today.
Brent crude futures for November settlement slipped $1.35 to $84.8 a barrel at 6:40 a.m. GMT. The contract fell to as low as $84.51, the lowest since January 14th. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures for November delivery dropped $1.15 to $77.59 a barrel. WTI declined to as low as $77.21, the lowest since January 6th. Both contracts slumped to 5% on Friday. The dollar index, meanwhile, climbed to a 20-year high today against a basket of major currencies. This means demand for dollar-denominated oil will be curtailed since buyers using other currencies must spend more to buy crude. The disruptions in the oil market from the Russia-Ukraine war, with the European Union sanctions banning Russian crude set to start in December, has lent some support to prices. Experts said that fuel shipments are being affected, with the Russian oil products expected to flow to Asia and the Middle East. Meanwhile, more than 1 million barrels per day of US crude is expected to go to Europe to fill the gap in Russian supplies. Attention is turning to what the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and Allies led by Russia may do when they meet on the 5th of October after agreeing to cut output modestly at the last meeting.
Now, the British pound hit an all-time low against the US dollar today, adding to the anxiety of consumers already preparing for soaring energy bills this winter. The pound plunged nearly 5% at one point in Asian trade to break below 1985 lows and hit 1.0327 against the US dollar. The sharp drop in the value of the pound comes as the British government grapples with soaring public debt and a cost of living crisis amid deteriorating investor confidence. The slump has prompted speculation of an emergency response from the Bank of England to shore up the pound as confidence evaporated in the new government's plan to borrow its way out of trouble. Taking you to world news, a gunman has killed 13 people, including 7 children, and wounded 21 others at a school in Russia. According to the Russian Investigative Committee, the other victims were 2 teachers and 2 security guards, and those wounded were 14 children and 7 adults. According to international media reports, the shooting took place about 600 miles east of Moscow. The reason for the shooting is not clear. According to Russia's investigative committee, the identity of the gunman had not been established. According to reports, the gunman had shot himself. Now in Pakistan, an army helicopter has crashed during an overnight mission in southwest Pakistan's Balochistan province, killing all 6 people on board, including 2 officers. In a statement today, the Pakistan military said the chopper crashed late last night during an operational flight. The army statement did not elaborate on what caused the incident or the nature of their operation in the area. Authorities said they are investigating the incident, the second in less than 2 months. On 1st of August, an army helicopter crashed in Balochistan again during a flood-related operation, killing 6, including a senior army official. And that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9 on AdaDerana 24. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.